long before he became part of one of Everest's greatest mysteries. Andy Harris was simply a young New Zealander who loved the outdoors. Born in 1964 in New Zealand, Andy Harris grew up surrounded by rugged landscapes, snow-covered peaks, and endless wilderness. From an early age, he developed a deep connection with nature. Friends described him as energetic, kind, and always ready for an adventure. Unlike many climbers who sought fame or glory, Andy climbed because he genuinely loved mountains. He found peace in high places where most people felt fear. As a young man, he joined New Zealand's search and rescue teams and quickly earned a reputation as someone people could depend on when conditions turned dangerous. Those who climbed with him often said the same thing. If Andy was there, you felt safer. He was skilled, calm under pressure, and incredibly strong. By the early 1990s, Andy had become one of New Zealand's most respected mountaineers. He had guided climbers on numerous expeditions and had already reached the summit of Mount Everest. But his most famous expedition was still ahead of him, and it would become the last climb of his life. In 1996, Andy joined Adventure Consultants, one of the world's premier Everest guiding companies. The company was led by the legendary guide Rob Hall. Hall had built a reputation for helping ordinary people achieve extraordinary dreams. His company guided paying clients to the top of Everest with one of the highest success rates in the world. Andy was one of Hall's trusted guides. The team assembled for the 1996 expedition included climbers from around the globe. Some were experienced mountaineers. Others were ambitious adventurers pursuing a lifelong dream. Among them was Doug Hansen, a mailman from Seattle who had failed to reach the summit the previous year and returned determined to succeed. Another climber was John Krakauer, a journalist assigned to write about the commercialization of Everest. No one knew that this expedition would soon become one of the deadliest disasters in Everest history. As the team moved through the Khumbu Icefall and climbed toward higher camps, everything appeared normal. The weather forecasts looked acceptable. The climbers were acclimatizing. The guides were experienced. Success seemed within reach. But Everest often hides its dangers until the very last moment. On the night of May 9, 1996, climbers left Camp 4 near the South Col and began their final push toward the summit. At nearly 26,000 feet, they were already in what climbers call the death zone. Here, the human body slowly dies. Oxygen levels are so low that thinking becomes difficult. Judgment becomes impaired. Simple decisions become life or death choices. Every step requires enormous effort. Andy Harris was one of the guides helping clients move upward through the darkness. The climb was immediately slower than expected. Traffic jams formed at key bottlenecks. Fixed ropes that should have been installed earlier were missing in some sections. Hours slipped away. By the time many climbers reached the summit, they were already dangerously behind schedule. Still, one by one, climbers stood atop the highest point on Earth. For a brief moment, dreams became reality. Then everything began to unravel. During the afternoon of May 10th, weather conditions deteriorated rapidly. Powerful winds and heavy snow swept across Everest. Visibility collapsed. Landmarks disappeared. Temperatures plunged. Climbers descending from the summit suddenly found themselves trapped inside a blinding white world. The mountain became a maze. Some climbers became lost. Others ran out of oxygen. Several became exhausted beyond recovery. Amid the chaos, communication between teams became increasingly difficult. At high altitude, even experienced climbers can suffer from hypoxia, the lack of oxygen reaching the brain. Hypoxia can create confusion, poor judgment, hallucinations, and an inability to recognize obvious dangers. Andy Harris found himself at the center of a growing emergency. Reports indicated that guide Rob Hall and client Doug Hansen were stranded high on the mountain. Both men were in serious trouble. Hall radioed for help. He needed oxygen. He needed assistance. And Andy responded, without hesitation. What happened next remains one of Everest's greatest mysteries. Throughout the disaster, climbers reported conflicting information regarding oxygen supplies near the south summit. At some point, Hall informed others that oxygen bottles appeared to be missing or empty. This created panic. Without supplemental oxygen at that altitude, survival becomes far more difficult. Andy Harris believed oxygen supplies were unavailable. However, other climbers later suggested the bottles may actually have been present and full. Many experts believe altitude-related confusion played a major role. Several survivors later theorized that Andy himself may have been suffering severe hypoxia. His perception of the situation could have been distorted by the extreme altitude. One climber later recalled conversations suggesting Andy was not thinking clearly. Others disagreed. What everyone agreed upon was this: Andy knew Rob Hall needed help, and he intended to reach him, despite worsening weather, despite exhaustion, despite the risks. Andy began climbing upward again. Most people on Everest were desperately trying to get down. Andy was going back up, into the storm, into darkness, into danger, to save a friend. As evening approached, visibility became nearly impossible. Winds screamed across the mountain. Snow erased tracks within minutes. Communication became increasingly fragmented. At some point during the rescue effort, Andy Harris disappeared. No one witnessed his final moments. No one knows exactly what happened. No body was ever recovered. The most widely accepted theory is that Andy became disoriented during the storm and fell from the mountain. Another possibility is that he simply wandered into the whiteout and succumbed to exhaustion and exposure. The brutal conditions erased almost every clue. Unlike many mountaineering accidents where investigators can reconstruct events, Andy's final journey vanished into Everest storm. The mountain kept its secret. When climbers finally reached safety, Andy was gone. So was Rob Hall. So was Doug Hansen. The disaster claimed 8 lives in a single day, making it one of the deadliest Everest tragedies at that time. The world was shocked. News reports spread across the globe. Questions followed. Could the disaster have been prevented? Were too many people attempting the summit? Did commercial pressure influence decisions? And what exactly happened to Andy Harris? In the years following the tragedy, Andy's actions became the subject of intense discussion. Journalist John Krakauer published the best-selling book Into Thin Air. The book described the events of the disaster and suggested that Andy may have been severely impaired by altitude sickness during the crisis. Some climbers agreed. Others strongly disagreed. Andy's friends and family believed portions of the account unfairly portrayed him. Many who knew him pointed out that he was one of the strongest climbers on the mountain and had a long history of competence under extreme conditions. Several argued that no one can accurately judge a person's mental state during a catastrophe while experiencing the same life-threatening conditions. The debate continued for years. Even today, mountaineers disagree about exactly what happened. Was Andy confused by hypoxia? Did communication errors create misunderstandings about the oxygen supplies? Could anyone have survived under those conditions? There are no definitive answers. Only fragments, radio calls, witness recollections, and a mystery frozen in time. Part 8. The Human Side of Heroism. Lost amid discussions about oxygen bottles and decision-making is a simple truth. Andy Harris was trying to help. When others were descending to safety, he chose to climb higher. He knew the risks. He understood the danger better than almost anyone else. Yet he continued upward because another climber needed assistance. That decision reflects something fundamental about his character. Throughout his life, Andy had built a reputation for helping people. Whether participating in rescue operations in New Zealand or guiding clients on dangerous mountains, he consistently placed others first. The same qualities that made him an exceptional guide may also have led him into Everest's storm. His story is not merely about a mountaineering accident. It is about loyalty, duty, courage, and the difficult choices people make under impossible circumstances. Today, more than 3 decades after the 1996 disaster, Andy Harris remains one of Everest's most enduring mysteries. The mountain has changed. Technology has improved. Weather forecasting is more accurate. Guiding practices have evolved. But some questions remain unanswered. Exactly where did Andy go after leaving the South Col? What did he see in those final hours? What happened during his attempt to reach Rob Hall? The answers disappeared into one of the harshest environments on Earth. Everest often preserves bodies for decades, yet some climbers simply vanish. Andy Harris became one of them. His final route remains unknown. His final moments remain unwitnessed. His final thoughts remain a mystery. Many people remember the 1996 Everest disaster through headlines, books, and documentaries. They remember the storm, the deaths, the controversy. But behind those events was a man whose life was defined by service and adventure. Andy Harris wasn't searching for fame. He wasn't chasing headlines. He was doing what he had always done, helping others in the mountains he loved. On May 10, 1996, as Everest descended into chaos, he chose to climb upward when common sense suggested turning back. That decision cost him his life. Yet it also revealed the character of the man behind the mystery. To this day, Everest keeps the secret of Andy Harris's final journey. But one thing is clear. In the face of overwhelming danger, he chose courage over safety and loyalty over self-preservation. And somewhere high above the clouds, on the slopes of the world's tallest mountain, the story of Everest's disappearing guide became part of mountaineering history forever.